The chair sat by the porch, facing outward. It had been placed there long ago, angled just enough to catch the late light. No one remembered exactly when it was moved there. It had simply stayed. A person lived inside the house behind it. Not much was known about that person. Some people passed by and noticed the porch. Few noticed the chair. Fewer noticed how often the door behind it opened, then closed again. Every morning, the door opened partway. Not fully, just enough for air to move. The person would pause there, hand resting on the frame, eyes lowered toward the chair. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be. The chair did not belong to comfort anymore. Its surface was worn smooth in places where weight had once settled. The legs held firm, though one leaned slightly inward, as if compensating for something missing. Dust gathered, then blew away. Leaves passed through, then moved on. The person followed a routine that rarely changed. The day began quietly. Movements were careful, almost rehearsed. Time was not measured by clocks, but by light shifting across the porch floor. When the light reached the edge of the chair, the person noticed. When it left, the person noticed again. Sometimes the person sat nearby, never in the chair, always close enough to feel its presence without disturbing it. Hands folded, breathing steady, eyes focused on the space just beyond the porch, where the ground dipped slightly before leveling out again. Nothing arrived. Nothing departed. Still, the posture of waiting remained. Afternoons carried a different weight. The porch grew warmer. Shadows shortened. The chair stood unchanged, holding its shape, holding its place. The person would pass it more often then, moving in and out of the house, each time slower than before. No one else came. No sound signaled a return. Yet the door continued to open. The chair continued to face outward. By evening, the person stood longer in the doorway. The air cooled. The porch darkened at the corners first. The chair became a silhouette, familiar even without detail. The door closed gently after that, not as an ending, only as a pause. The chair remained where it was. Morning after morning, it faced the same direction, as if orientation mattered, as if turning it even slightly would change something that had already settled. The person adjusted life around that fixed point. Footsteps learned how to pass without brushing against the legs. The porch boards learned the sound of those steps. Light and careful. Nothing accidental happened there. Some days, the person cleaned the porch. Not thoroughly. Just enough. Dust was swept away, then allowed to return. The chair was never moved during this ritual. The broom stopped short of its feet, leaving a thin outline untouched. Light came and went in predictable patterns. The chair received it first in the early hours. Later, it was partially shaded by the railing. By mid-afternoon, the light avoided it altogether. The person noticed all of this without naming it. There were moments when the person stood behind the chair. Close. So close the space between them felt deliberate. Hand hovered, then lowered. The chair was left exactly as it was. From the porch, the world looked unchanged. The same stretch of ground. The same quiet distance. Things passed far enough away to remain irrelevant. Nothing crossed the boundary of the porch itself. Inside the house, time felt heavier. Rooms held their breath. Objects stayed where they had been placed, as if instructed not to shift. The person moved through those rooms with a subdued rhythm, always returning to the door that led back to the porch. Each return carried a pause, a slight delay before opening the door, a moment long enough to prepare for what was not there. The chair waited without effort. Its presence required nothing. It did not signal. It did not promise. Evening brought longer shadows again. The chair stretched itself across the porch floor, thin and elongated. The person watched that shadow more than the chair itself, as if the outline held something the solid form could not. When darkness settled, the chair became harder to see, but it did not disappear. The person knew exactly where it stood. The door closed once more. Softly, as it always did. Something rested beneath the waiting. Not visible at first. Not loud enough to interrupt the routine. It showed itself only in small changes. The person began to linger longer near the chair. Not beside it. Behind it. Standing where the backrest met the open air. From there, the distance beyond the porch looked different. Flatter. Less certain. The chair had once faced a presence. That was not said aloud, but the angle suggested it. The way it had been positioned was not accidental. Someone had chosen where it would look. Someone had decided where it would remain. The person remembered this without memory. No images surfaced. No scenes replayed. Only a quiet understanding that the chair had not always been empty. Hands began to rest on the porch railing more often. The posture of the body shifted slightly forward, as if listening required leaning. As if arrival might announce itself through the ground before sound. Time stretched differently then. Minutes lost their edges. The light stayed longer in the same places. Or perhaps it was only noticed more carefully. The chair received attention without acknowledgement. Some evenings, the person stood close enough to cast a shadow over the seat. The shadow filled it completely. For a brief moment, the shape looked occupied. The person did not step away, did not correct it. Breathing slowed during those moments. The house behind the porch felt distant. The inside no longer pulled as strongly as before. The door was still there, but the threshold became less important. What lay beneath the waiting was not hope. Not exactly. It was familiarity. The habit of expecting a shape to be filled. The habit of leaving space. The chair held that space without question. It accepted the weight of air. The weight of time. The weight of what had once been placed there. When night arrived, the person remained outside longer. Long enough for the porch to cool. Long enough for shadows to dissolve completely. Only then did the door close. Slowly, as if closing something unfinished. The chair stayed through the change, not a visible one, not something that announced itself. The person began to sit less nearby. Standing became shorter. The pauses at the doorway softened, still present but thinner, as if the waiting had learned how to loosen its grip without letting go completely. One morning, the door opened wider than usual. Light spilled across the porch in a single, clean stretch. The chair received it without resistance. The person stepped outside and did not stop immediately. There was a moment when the space between the person and the chair closed slightly. Not enough to touch, enough to acknowledge. The chair remained empty, and that emptiness no longer asked for explanation. The person did not sit, did not reach out, simply stood, facing the same direction as the chair, sharing its orientation. The ground beyond the porch looked the same, still open, still quiet. Waiting had not ended. It had thinned. It no longer pressed against the chest or slowed the breath. It existed now as a background state, like air that could be moved through. By late afternoon, the light shifted again. The chair's shadow shortened, lost its shape sooner than expected. The person noticed and did not hold on to it. That evening, the door closed without hesitation. Not carefully, not abruptly, just closed. The chair remained by the porch, facing outward, still placed, still present. And inside the house, something rested more easily. There are things no one says out loud. Not because there is nothing to say, but because saying it might change everything. If this story feels familiar, perhaps you understand it better than most.